Welcome to the Bonafide Leaders Podcast with your host, Tim G. Williams. Let's get to it. Friend Tim G. Williams of the Bonafide Leaders Podcast. I am so glad to be talking to you today on our very first episode of the Bonafide Leaders Podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
Numero uno. I'm excited to be here and excited to be kicking this off.
That's great. Awesome. So I think where a good place to start with this first episode is Bonafide Leaders. This is your consulting business, a new-ish business. I want to hear, where did you start? Why did you start? What is the driving force behind Bonafide Leaders? What is it? And where are you hoping to take it in the near future? I think all our listeners would appreciate hearing a bit of an overview and a bit of backstory.
Yeah, be happy to share a little bit. So I've worked in the corporate environment for the last 22 years, since, a year ago. And my focus was really finance, operations, strategy, leadership. And I enjoyed those things immensely. I went to school for those things. At the same time, what was happening with me in my career is that there was a shift that was taking place internally, where I was getting more energy from the organizational challenges internally. And I got more passion around developing people, developing teams, helping the organization be healthy than I did necessarily for profit and loss, although I still enjoy that work. Having my own business is fun, being able to run, a business and see profit and cash and all that kind of stuff. But my passion for people has always been there, and it just began to grow more and more and more. And the truth of the matter is, at those executive levels, what the company needs more than anything is output and results. And while results were there, and while I was spending a significant amount of time on that, I really enjoyed developing the people to get the results, more so than just the end result, the results themselves. And so over time, I had a few conversations as I was getting ready to exit. And one of the common themes that I heard from people is, Tim, I think you'd be a good coach. So I decided to enroll in an executive coaching, a graduate certificate program, got that certificate, and then begin the process of starting to coach people. And then I think along the way, I realized, my real passion is around leaders, because leaders shape our nations, they shape our country, they shape our communities, they shape our churches, they shape our businesses. And effective leadership, John Maxwell says, everything rises and falls on leadership. And at the end of the day, that's the target audience that I really, really care about, is ensuring that leaders who are in positions of authority and influence are doing it in an effective way, and what I call a bona fide way. It's legitimate, it's authentic, it's inspirational. People look forward to working with you. And that name Bonafide came from a basketball announcer years ago when I was a kid named Dick Vitale. Dick Vitale was college basketball, the announcer that everyone wanted to listen to. And he would sometimes talk about these teams as being, that's a bona fide number one team. That's a bona fide All-American player. And I didn't know what that meant when I was younger, but I figured out that meant legitimate. That meant the real deal. And as I just read all these leadership books, I just used to soak it all up. And then sometimes I would be in environments where it didn't appear to me that that's the kind of leadership that was written about. This disconnect, I wanted to be a part of that solution. And so I guess you could say the combination of all of that led to me ultimately going out on my own and creating this entity that would help restore in some ways what I call authentic leadership to the marketplace.
So cool. Okay, I want to get into that. I want to get into what Bonafide Leaders is, and I want to hear about your background too, because I think your background's really unique. I mean, the credentials that you got, the combination of all those things, I think is very unique. But I'm curious, what do you think is the thing that makes a leader bona fide? If you had to boil it down, what is the one thing that you think would do it all? I know integrity is very important.
It is. Yeah, it is.
But
when I'm in front of a group, I've designed it as kind of three things. So I know you asked me one, and I'm cheating
Yeah, no,
already
yeah.
on the
That's
test,
great.
but I've thought about it as really three things um, that are just essential and foundational. Meaning that there's so many traits that you want a leader to have: courage, and competitiveness, and fire, and drive. I mean, all these things, right? There's a bunch of competencies and qualities that we all believe are important. In my experience, I would say there's three that are paramount. So character and integrity it sits at the foundation of what a trusted leader must have. In the absence of honesty, candor, authenticity, there can really be no trust. And if there can't be trust, then it's really difficult to say that, someone has high character, high integrity, they work ethically. So that's the foundation, number one. Number two is a leader, I think, is very strong at the combination, which is difficult, of both strategy and execution. Some would say strategy is a vision. I would say strategy is that thing that acts as a bridge to what it is that we want, where it is that we want to go, and then how we get there. And then execution is all of the parts and pieces that ultimately make strategy happen. So I think leaders are good at both the visioning part as well as rallying the people, the teams, the resources, the organizations to then go make that thing happen. Scheduling the meetings, all the things that need to make the strategy come together. And then the third piece of leadership, I think that's really, really important, is leading people and teams. I've been really blessed to be a part of teams, I guess, ever since I was in the 6th grade. That was my first ever team experience on a basketball team. And I'm just now coaching, actually, this year, a 6th grade basketball team, which is coincidentally very funny.
Full circle.
Full circle. We're not very good. And I was not very good. I was awful, actually, in the 6th grade as a basketball player. But teams is just something I've been a part of a long time. And I've seen really, really amazing championship level teams. I've been a part of those teams. I've been a member of those teams. I've been a contributing member of those teams. And then in other cases, I've been privileged to serve and lead those teams. And then leading people. Leading teams is one thing, right? That's collectively getting everybody to buy into a shared vision. And then the individuals, right? How do you then go connect with each person to make sure that they feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves? So when I answer your question, I just think about the essence of a leader really comes down to those three core things. One, it's about character and integrity as the foundation. Secondly, it's about being able to do both strategy and execute. And then third is leading both the team as well as the people well.
Amazing. And so these are the components that you teach and train others to do in a variety of different ways through Bonafide Leaders. And it comes from your background. So you've got a pretty extensive, very serious, impressive background, in my opinion. But yeah, looking at your bio, I mean, you spent decades in a corporate environment. You, I believe, have an MBA. You're a ICF, International Coaching Federation certified. And you're also a business instructor at SMU. So tell me a little bit of that background, just very briefly, your story, your credentials, because I do want folks to know you're talking to a very serious person, and a very bona fide leader. So yeah, but a rare one. I think you've got such a unique combination of skills and background that I think it's important for people to know as they get to know you.
I appreciate you saying that. I've been blessed, first of all, so I give all honor to God for giving me this platform and these experiences. It's really been a joy. And I hope that my clients experience just a little bit of what I feel like I've been given through a ton of mentors, a ton of supporters, people who've had my back, who've encouraged me along the way. And I'm just an output of that love and that support, that encouragement. Also doing my part, right? The hard work that it takes to get there. Background wise, yeah, I was a finance undergrad, and that came from this love. My mom would come home. She was a flight attendant, and she would come home and bring the newspaper. I used to love to get the newspaper. USA Today or the Dallas Morning News. Back then, I think there was also the Dallas Times Herald or Fort Worth Star Telegram and all these different papers that she would get on the plane. And I would always go to the sports section. And I would just look at whatever the season. If it's baseball, I'm looking at RBIs, runs batted in, batting average, all these statistical data. Basketball, I'm looking at field goals. Oh, okay, what's his field goal percentage and what's their free throw percentage? And oh, wow, how many offensive rebounds did this team get versus that team? And I was just fascinated by numbers. And then on top of that, I would go to the money section and I would try to understand bonds and stocks and commodities and what is the Dow Jones and how does it work and how does all this stuff connect with, the economy. And so this fascination for numbers and understanding money, because we didn't have a whole lot, but my mom did the absolute best she could to make it go around. So that launched me basically to have a degree in finance. From there, started working in finance and accounting jobs. Along the way, picked up an MBA, and then had my first operational job where I had all order fulfillment responsibilities for a business that was, I don't know, we were probably $400 to $500 million in size. And I had basically the US based business, big customers like Samsung and Western Digital in this hard disk drive space. And then from there had just, expanded responsibilities where you've got not only the accounting and finance, which I had a background in, but also operations. So now you become what's called a controller or director of finance and operations, where you get the accounting, the finance, the operations, all reporting to you. And then progressively bigger jobs from there, ultimately running FP&A for, at the time, about a $13 to $14 billion company, FP&A being financial planning and analysis. And then ended up having to move to California after we acquired a company, moved back here to Texas. And the last job was actually as a direct report to our chairman, president, and CEO in a completely different role, where I was a strategic advisor to him and the management committee on some public policy related initiatives that we were working both at the federal, state, and then the local level. So just a completely different job altogether. And then at the end of that period where that work was at a really good place, some substantial legislation was passed. It was time to move on and start Bonafide full time.
Okay. That's, like I said, so impressive. I was laughing as you were kind of talking about what you looked through the newspaper. I wanted to interject and just be like, man, Tim, we had very different childhood fascinations. I wanted to stay away from numbers as much as possible.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was a creative writing major, and then I eventually got my MBA in finance, so I kind of backed into numbers, but that is not my forte like it is for you. That is something that you're interested, that you love, you enjoy, you're very good at it. That's not the case for me, but I can I can talk a good game. Okay, amazing, cool. So I know now you're using this background, using all these skills, your experience, the wisdom you've gleaned over the last several decades, and now are teaching and training through Bonafide Leaders.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about what you offer through that through this company. So I know you've got several branches or offerings, if you want to call it that. There's organizational consulting, there's leadership development. You do speaking as well. And then there's certain sectors that you want to work in: business, technology, nonprofits, things like that. So yeah, give me like kind of a lay of the land of what Bonafide Leaders is looking like, and kind of, customer base and some of the things that you're offering to them, and how you improve their business.
Yeah. So Bonafide Leaders is a consultancy, really focused on three primary areas of specialty. The first is where we started, one-to-one executive coaching. Second is leadership development, as you mentioned. And that's typically in a classroom environment with as few as maybe 10 leaders to as many as, for example, something that I'm currently working on. That's a group of 55 leaders that I'm with every single month. The third is organizational consulting, where I'm working with a leadership team, perhaps at an offsite, perhaps they're inside their corporate offices, to identify connection gaps between vision, values, their operation, their culture. Maybe they need a new college graduate rotational program. Turns out I've got expertise in helping lead that for a number of years prior life. Maybe they need help with getting their operating profit up a couple of points. Maybe there's a disconnect between how they want the external world to see them versus their internal dealings. Maybe it's a KPI issue. Maybe there's system limitations. Maybe the business just doesn't understand exactly how they can improve their operations where they want them. So organizational consulting, leadership development, and then the one-on-one executive coaching. And what I try to do in every case is focus on leaders and executives that are in the business, technology, and nonprofit spaces. That's not to say I don't also coach and work with others. For example, there's a client I have today who's in the higher education space. So not exactly nonprofit, certainly not business, not technology, but it's a good fit because of this particular leader's direction and where they want to go. What I'm looking to provide for clients on the coaching side and really on all three phases is clarity about vision, mission, purpose, and becoming just much more effective so that each individual that I encounter is in a position to maximize their capability and all that they have to offer to the world that we're in. That's just really important to me. It drives me, it gets me excited when I think about being a part of someone's development, just like the 6th grade basketball team that I'm coaching. Being able to pour into these boys to help them build confidence in themselves. And now I'm not doing it with boys in this professional sense, right? It's different, but in many ways it's still similar because it's about trying to discover, perhaps in some cases, the untapped potential. And if it's not untapped potential, maybe it's just helping that individual gain clarity about their next step, or maybe they've moved to a new role and they just need to figure out, hey, how do I bring success here? Help me with the situational assessment. Help me identify gaps, things I thought worked well before, but maybe they don't work so well now. Fortunately, having gone through so many different job changes and been a part of so many different organizations and been at the very top of the iceberg in terms of major company decisions for a global dynamic technology company, it puts me in a position to be able to identify with clients their needs, what they're working on, their focus areas, and hopefully help them augment themselves, their businesses, and achieve all the success in their wildest ambitions. That's what I want to be, is the sidekick to those leaders and their companies, their organizations, to help them become the best that they can be.
That is such a powerful mission. I mean, to your point, leaders they run the world. They are the ones that shape the vision of what the world is to become. And you can be a key component of that, and in varying degrees, but I think that's such a powerful mission. It's so amazing.
Thank you.
One of the things that you talked about, this is more tactical, but something that really helps you achieve where you've gotten in life, but also for your clients, that this has become an important thing that you kind of work through, is time management.
Yeah.
And I know that to achieve everything that you have in life, to run a successful business, to help clients run theirs, and everything that you need to do is process-wise, strategy, whatever it is harnessing your time.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you could kind of just sketch out some things that you've learned over the years for time management for yourself, but something that maybe our listeners could take away, and just there's places that I want to go. Talking about that strategy from your vision to your execution for 2024. What are some things to think about that have been really helpful for you in your career regarding how you manage your time and productivity?
Yeah, time is one of those what I'll call forever issues. There's some issues that are near term. Artificial intelligence, what do we do with it? How do we manage it? Generational, right? There's always new generations changing, from Z to millennials to X's and boomers, etc. This one, when it comes to time management, I have to believe that even Moses, way back when, probably struggled with leading those 2 million men plus their families with time. It just doesn't seem like there's enough of it.
That's funny.
Leonardo da Vinci probably struggled with time. I mean, I think all of us struggle with it in one way or another. Amen. And I think there's some myths with it too, particularly in the time that we live in now. one of the myths is that we can actually have work-life balance. I call it a myth
Okay.
because, and I think I struggled a lot when I used to go to training classes and they would lead with, this is work-life balance. And we even had it at different times in my corporate career as part of teams that I was affiliated with, the diversity team. We had that as a core item. And I think internally struggled with that because
Okay.
the idea of balance is, it's almost setting ourselves up to fail, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because balance is like that seesaw that we all used to be on when we were kids. And if we remember as kids on the playground, did we ever have balance? Really difficult to maintain. However, you can get a lot of an enjoyment from the seesaw as one goes up and one goes down, one goes up and one goes down. The enjoyment doesn't always come at this stable level. So what I like to call work life is more of about an integration.
Hmm.
It's integrating my work with my life with my work, and figuring out a way to do that in a healthy way. Another way that people use it is, kind of working in rhythms. So I'll give maybe an example. So this is a situation where, again, a lot of executives and busy professionals sometimes don't like to talk about their personal life at work. The reality is that we all got them. We all have challenges in our personal life. And for some reason, which never made sense to me, we sometimes want to hide those. And I just don't get that because, again, we're holding back, all of us. But in my personal life, let's say the goal is to clean the house this weekend. One of the great tips that I actually got from my wife, that she got from a book, I forget the book title, was setting a timer and starting with one thing. So, for example, depending on how the house is looking, when you start on a Saturday morning, it could feel like boiling the ocean to clean the house this weekend. By Sunday night, going to be done. Okay. Well, why don't instead I start with a room? How about this office? And all I'm going to do is focus on the desk and clearing the clutter. And I'm going to set a timer for 20 minutes. And that's all the time I'm going to give it. At the end of 20 minutes, I'm going to set a 5-minute timer to rest. Use the restroom, drink some water, take a walk outside, clear my mind. And then I'll set another timer for the time I need left to finish the clutter on this desk. So setting the timer when we've got free time or even after a meeting. So now bringing back the professionals. So you just come back from an hour-long meeting, you're at your desk, you have a little free time before the next meeting. Why not set a timer for 10 minutes? I'm going to knock out email for the next 10 minutes. And then in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to return a phone call. And then the next 10 minutes, I'm going to finish some more emails and maybe start this Excel spreadsheet or this PowerPoint or this presentation I need to work on. But the setting a timer really has been like a gem for me because it gives me very focused time, and I actually feel really good after I've accomplished. Even though it's something small, it feels good, and there's some psychology behind that as well. So that's one of those life hacks for me that has been big. That's a small thing, but I think can be really helpful.
Okay, I love your idea. I want to go back to that work-life integration component. I have a 1-year-old. I am trying my hardest to figure out how to integrate these things. But no, I'm so curious about that because work-life balance is such a huge topic. I mean, you see
Yeah.
that everywhere, especially on LinkedIn, especially in corporate environments
Yep.
you've experienced. And I know finance is no friend to time to work-life balance and integrating those lives. So I'm curious, like, is it like, if you're a successful person, you want to achieve something in life, you should be working 60 hours a week. I mean, that's just what it takes. Do you have anything like that? Because I'm wondering, like, is there just like a minimum threshold of work that like, this is just what it takes, man, if you want to
Sure.
get somewhere in life? I mean, how do you think about that? Like, how do you balance that? That's really
Yeah.
hard.
That's a fair question. I'll give a couple of different illustrations that come to mind. So use the 6th grade basketball team. We have our playoff game tonight. I'm not optimistic, although the coach, I'm going to do everything I can to encourage these boys and try to
You're
steer us
very
to a
hopeful.
win.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
However, I've got many boys on the team. Most of the boys, probably only 2 of them, actually play basketball outside of the practice window
Okay.
and outside of the games that we have, which are 8 games over the course of 2 months.
Okay.
You can imagine on that basketball team who's getting better, who's improving, and who's not improving, while the other teams that we play against are getting better. So you talk about a minimum threshold. There is this thing called time outside of the day job. And I would be completely lying if I said I only worked 40 hours a week for 22 years. Of course not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At the same time, so think about college graduation. Most of us went to colleges that required about 120 hours to get that bachelor's degree. So the colleges sort of have in their mind a minimum requirement, typically that you got to have so many hours within your major. That's a minimum. And I think that if you want to be at the fringes, working 40 hours a week is perfectly fine. I think in investment banking, those who I know who are in that field, if you want to do
Yes.
that route, you're going to need to probably put in 70 hours plus, particularly if you're on Wall Street doing that kind of a job. Every industry, every job is a little bit different. But the other thing I would say about seasons, so now I'm coming back to integrating work and life. I was once in a job where I was running FP&A for the company, a $13 billion company during the 3 years that I ran financial planning and analysis. And the truth of the matter is that our systems were such, those who will listen to this know exactly what systems I'm referring to, but were such that there was a limitation which required all of us on the team to do a lot of what we call QC, quality check. The quality checking process was monotonous, however, very, very time consuming. So for about 3 weeks out of every quarter, I spent a lot of time with the grasshoppers, the cockroaches as I left the building, the cleaning crew. I literally left the building at 2, 3 a.m., 1 a.m., 12 midnight, regularly at some point over the course of those 3 weeks, as did members of my team. That was an awful period of time, particularly when you have a 30-mile commute waiting for you after you finish and your eyes can barely open. Not the best work-life, quote-unquote, balance at that time. However, my wife, my kids knew that this was a 3-week slugfest, and they wouldn't see me very much. But after that period, we found ways to be I would call a regular family. But there was an expectation, and they developed an expectation in terms of rhythm that for this 3 weeks, Dad is out. But we know that we've got the whole rest of the quarter that we'll be able to sort of operate normally. That's what I would call an example of work-life integration, where there's a reasonable expectation that's set, where I'm not being asked to participate perhaps in some things that normally I would be a part of in that 3-week period at home, because there's an allowance for Dad to be busy at work during this time. Oh, and there's also an allowance on my end that when this 3 weeks is over, Mama's going to need some time too. And so that might mean I get the kids a little bit more often and I do more of the pickups and what have you. So it's that whole integration of work, life, family that, again, we don't like to talk about at work for some reason, particularly as we matriculate up the chain of command, if you will. And I just think it's a waste for us not to, because it's all there, it's very real, and all of us struggle with it.
Yes. Thank you so much. That is extremely helpful, that clarity on that, because that is a very muddy, unclear conversation typically when you read on LinkedIn, or whatever. So that's very, very realistic, and I appreciate you saying that.
Sure.
That makes sense to me. Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to end this first episode. I am so excited about the rest of the season, every episode after this. Just because there's so much wisdom and experience that you have, and as you've seen, the strategy, the vision component, but also the very, very tactical. Like, you're going to be up till 1 a.m. for 3 weeks, and that's just what's going to like. I love that combination of things back and forth between the big and the little picture. So, thank you so much, Tim. I cannot wait to have another conversation, and we will see you all next time.
I enjoyed it. Numero uno. in the books.
We're in the book. That's a wrap. All right. Thanks, man. We'll see you next time.
Okay.